The Paint Job, also known as Painted Heart, is a 1992 film written and directed by Michael Taav, and we have a cast including Bebe Neuwirth, Will Patton, and Robert Pastorelli. I watched this because of Bebe Neuwirth, and I will say she's in it a lot, and that made my heart sing. But the film itself I found to be really boring. It's marketed as a comedy thriller, which I don't understand. For me, there was no comedy in this. And it's not thrilling enough to be called a thriller, but there are some thrilling scenes. But in general, if you were looking for a thriller, I wouldn't recommend this. So I don't think the film quite knows what it wants to be. But even that aside, I found the narrative to be really boring and the characters to be really dull. There were a couple of times when some of the characters were okay, but never enough for me to say that I ultimately liked this or that character. Margaret, Bebe Neuwirth's character, is married to Willie, and she ends up being in a relationship with Wesley. And the title refers to the fact that Wesley and Willie are house painters. The title's fine, no problems with the title at all, but it's very, very boring. It's basically just going back and forth between the characters, and of course there's this query of will they be caught, and if they are, what's going to happen. Willie has quite a temper. He is quite an aggressive, unpredictable character, which in theory could have made it a good film, or at least a slightly more interesting film, but I don't really think that worked very well. We got a little bit out of the character, but the scenes surrounding the character were just so boring. And honestly, it's very much style over substance. The technical aspects are great, very well filmed. We have some really nice locations. The set designs are absolutely fine. And the colour palette is quite pleasing. It's quite a bright film. There's quite a lot of bright outdoor scenes, but we also have some darker, grittier scenes as well. So I think the mix there worked really well. But in terms of the actual story, it's very lacking in anything interesting. Some of the character writing is okay, some of their behaviours, some of the ways they respond to the situations. The dialogue between the characters is very boring. I've used that word a lot, but that's the best word to describe this. Not a lot happens. Occasionally the characters will have an outburst and that behaviour is relatively interesting. But for the most part, the Paint Job, or Painted Heart, doesn't have a lot to offer. It's not funny. It's not thrilling. I love Bebe Neuwirth, and the performances across the board are absolutely fine, but the characters are generally not interesting. Their interactions with each other are kind of dull. As I said, occasionally a character will get really annoyed at a situation, usually Willie, but sometimes the others, and that meant that it was a little bit interesting for a minute or two, and then it dropped back down. Do I recommend it? Only if you're a fan of anybody in this. For me, that was, of course, Bebe Neuwirth, because the story itself is very lacking. The characters are generally not interesting. Unfortunately, for me at least, The Paint Job is not a very good film.